I think I'm on the same page as the princess regarding this boy.
Oh, give it a rest. That boy is a living reminder of her own failures. Well, at least that's how the princess sees him.
Teacups full, everyone? Good, because I feel like I'm going to be dishing it out today. Some unpopular opinions that are sure to make anyone who likes Breath of the Wild mad, but alas, here we are, talking about Breath of the Wild. Specifically, its story and the biggest, most quintessential problem with how this game goes about its narrative design. And I doubt you'd be watching this if you hadn't played it already, but just in case, story spoilers. Even though, whatever, if you're playing this game for its story, then you're probably playing it for the wrong reasons. Anyway, though, so before we begin, I need to give the disclaimer that I love Breath of the Wild. I think it's one of the best open world games I've ever played. The simple mechanics of each of the Sheikah Slate being utilized the entire game makes it not only one of the best games to play, but just to mess around in. Not to mention the sprinkling of survival elements kept me on my toes whenever I entered a new area that I wasn't familiar with. I love the gameplay in this game, and honestly, it's probably in my top Zeldas of all time. However, the big problem is that this game has a major problem with how it tells its story, and that's all thanks to the fact that Link, for some reason, is still a silent protagonist. And look, I get it, Link has always been this way. But you see, in just that, Breath of the Wild was supposed to be a shakeup of the formula Zelda had trapped itself in for so many years. There's no linear progression, no 3-hit to kill bosses, new survival elements, cooking recipes, it was fully voice acted. Hell, they even decided to change up the iconic green tunic, and you know, that's not even just it. I know some people will claim that this game is really a return to form, but nonetheless, there was this pattern. So why is it that when the designers were trying to rethink the whole formula, they skipped the part about how their protagonist interacts with the story? And I can already hear somebody claiming that it doesn't matter because it's a video game and doesn't have to have a good story, which I would claim, why have one then? But nonetheless, okay, look, the game opens with a cutscene, Zelda calling out to Link to awaken him from his slumber, and once you leave, you're treated to the opening cinematic of Link overlooking Hyrule. These are some key bits of immersion, effective ones at that, but namely, they're trying to hook you into this story. Furthermore, just to get out of the tutorial, Link has to help the King of Hyrule, which requires you to listen to his giant lore dump. And if when you're learning how to play a game also correlates with the beginning of the story, you can assume the creators want you to be interested in both of them. And these cutscenes are long, they aren't just these few bits of dialogue. They even opt to omit your ability to control Link during them for the sake of immersion. Not to mention all the gear and items unlocked by engaging with the plot and memories, so yes, this story is supposed to matter and is supposed to be good, but it's not. And for the sake of us just weeding out excuses, this is not just a game aimed towards kids. Nintendo knows their fan base, which is why there are also a bunch of dirty jokes in this game. And the for kids argument isn't even an argument, but that's a topic for another day. Anyway, so look, I think there are a lot of problems with this game's story, but like I said, the biggest one is Link. Link doesn't have a personality. Link barely even emotes. The closest we get is in the memories, but even then, he mostly remains stoic in contrast to the supporting cast, who carry the whole scene. Which is why he's not even the focus of the camera angles. He doesn't even qualify as a cipher, because that would imply the player could express themselves through him, but they can't in big story moments, so why is he the protagonist? Some people try to say that Zelda is the main character of this game because she's at the core of the emotional beats, but we don't play as Zelda. In the interactive format of a video game, the player is the one moving plot along. Thus, they dictate when something happens in the story. So why is the key person of the plot and the person we, the player, control two different people? It just creates this unnecessary distance from the heart of the story. And the writers probably took note of that, so they gave Link the scenes with the champions to flesh out his relationships a little bit, to try to make things a bit better. But it honestly only made it worse. Like, honestly, give me one reason that Mipha should love Link. Other than he's hot, which we can all agree on. Her memory goes into some tropey childhood friends kind of stuff, but Mipha is the only one expressing herself throughout the whole scene, while Link just stares at her like, oh. It's not like it's some childlike crush either. She made him hand-tailored armor to marry him. If anything, her having this cutesy crush might have been more endearing, but the game is attempting to sell me on the idea that she is madly in love with this person who can barely master more than a surprised glance. Is this a reciprocated love? Is it one-sided? I don't know. It's not even dialogue, just her speaking in hopes that its superficial meaning can appeal to a very base desire of the player.
I was always willing to heal your wounds, even back then.
There's no real history, no chemistry, because one of the major characters is doing barely more than T-posing. And while some people can claim that it works for them, it's also equally valid for people to say that it means nothing to them, because that's how all the champion scenes go. They just kinda talk at Link. But they're all supposed to be best friends, all of them sworn to the unifying duty of protecting Zelda. These people who have died were Link's friends. They're supposed to matter to him, but he doesn't show the slightest bit of emotion when engaging with them. On paper, it sounds really good. You, the player, are the sole survivor of a horrible attack. You don't remember anything, but the more and more you travel, you begin to realize the realities of your circumstances. Your friends have all died. Evil forces have been planted all across the land. People have near given up hope because you, the player, failed. Can you imagine that heart-wrenching story of Link uncovering memories of all this? That burden, that weight. It sounds so good. But it's not, because Link doesn't convey any of it. He barely even conveys what the player is feeling. And honestly, this wouldn't be so infuriating if Link hadn't had personality before. Just look at Wind Waker as a great example of this. Just look at how expressive Toon Link is. He's always reacting to his surroundings, albeit mostly to get a laugh, but in a way that also makes him relatable to the player and responsive to the world we're supposed to be immersed in. He's silly and cute and understandable. And even back in Majora's Mask, the game opens with Link, head hung low in a dreary fog. His falls down the tree slump starts with flashing images of different faces he will become. When he sees his reflection as a Deku shrub, he shakes his head violently in fear of what he's become. And most namely, every single time he puts on the mask, he lets out a harsh scream because he's become overcome with emotion, which fits that game's theme of misery, just like Toon Link fits the comical world he exists in. And our hero of the wild just doesn't have that. And it's not because Breath of the Wild doesn't have a theme. The game is clearly trying to have a theme of personal failure throughout its narrative. Zelda, Link, the champions, all of them failed to save Hyrule. But for some reason, Link is apparently the only one who can right those wrongs, and is the one carrying that drama. Which makes no sense because he can't. It's like the writers are attempting to tell a character-driven story while not actually exploring the inner turmoil of said character. Link is out searching for his memories. He's supposed to be the chosen one, and each of the dungeons only show memories of his non-existent relationship with the champions, with possibly the exception of Urbosa, but that's more Zelda focused. And even if maybe they tried to make Zelda the true main character, why is everything so focused on Link then? Why are the memories shot so that we never see Link's face? It's just lazy storytelling. If this story places all their stakes into Link, but Link isn't a character, then their story doesn't have stakes. The only true motivation is, as a player, you want to go do the next thing. Not that the story has actually properly motivated you to do said thing. Which, once again, Breath of the Wild's gameplay is really good, so it gets away with having such a lackluster story. The closest we get to some sort of characterization for Link is in some of the memories, where Zelda admires how dutiful he is. But anyone can quickly tell she's talking more about herself than him, because that's Zelda's character, because in contrast to Link, the player actually knows what Zelda wants. She wants to be the hero. We understand her motivation. She's angry about the role she has versus the role she wants. And when her big climactic moment comes, she fails, and she responds accordingly. She's an actual character.
It's all my fault. Our only hope for defeating Ganon is lost, all because I couldn't harness this cursed power.
But why doesn't Link get the same treatment? Why doesn't he have a cute British accent? Why isn't he allowed to respond? Why because the game didn't want to take that much of a chance with its story. The game itself was such a departure from the pattern that they probably wanted to keep it safe with the story. Which sucks, because I would have loved to see a more fully realized Link. But you know what's weird? You know what would fix all of these issues, all this narrative dissonance? If Link and Zelda were the same character. All the motivation and drama would then lie with our protagonist, who would have understandable history and desires to slay Ganon. Nothing else has to change. The game would still be just as fun, and the story would be infinitely better because it would be Zelda remembering her own struggles that led to her failure, which would only drive her to make things right. It could be so much better. But it's not. And it just sucks, because I like Breath of the Wild, but no matter which way you slice it, it's too shallow and superficial to be a grand epic, but too time-consuming and monotonous to qualify as subtle. I even like the old Zeldas with their minimalist storytelling. But this isn't even that. There is so much attention to the story, from the actual gameplay to the own grandeur the story carries itself under. And with the game succeeding on all the risks it's taking, it only makes the shortcomings and residual dust of the formula stick out even more.
Because here I am playing one of the funnest games ever, only to be stopped for 5 minutes of cutscenes that only seeks to break my immersion with the game, with characters telling me how much I should care when I really don't. And because I want to engage with the game's gameplay as much as I can, because I like playing it, then I'm forced to sit through this half-baked story about this cookie-cutter imitation of a character I've loved so much before.
And please, I understand this is a case of me placing my own priorities first. I like games that tell me a good story, whether it be subtle and hidden, or blatant and full of glory. I play a lot of games for their narrative, and this still doesn't make Breath of the Wild a bad Zelda, it just makes it imperfect, and I'm critical because I want the next game to be better. Like, I know people have said this before, but a Majora's Mask tier storytelling combined with Breath of the Wild mechanics, then we'd have ourselves a game. But this isn't that, and I can only dream for now. I just hope the next Legend of Zelda will pick up where Breath of the Wild left off and take some story cues from the previous entries, because the foundation is there. They just need to tap into it. For now though, that's all I got. Thank you for watching and listening to me spout my opinion for a while, and I'll hopefully see you next time.